It's really wonderful that this session on the mother's arrival and the new consciousness is happening just a couple of days before mother's birthday on February 21st. And I just feel really blessed that, the last session I did on Sri Aurobindo's nationalism, or his, politics and yoga, I was in Surat. And today for this session on the mother, I just returned last night at midnight from Baroda. So, Sri Aurobindo's Karm Bhumi has been like, it's been kind of my journey through this webinar series and my pilgrimage through Sri Aurobindo's, wherever his footsteps have fallen on this land of India, I've been kind of following that. So it's really, I really feel blessed. And yesterday in the morning, I was at the Baroda Nivas, where he lived for 13 years. And then the day before, I was in the room where he had his office as a professor and vice principal. So it's like, mother has been blessing me with all the right experiences as we go through this webinar series. So anyway, today's topic is on mother's arrival and the new consciousness. So maybe I'll begin with sharing the screen. Is this visible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is our topic for the day. The mother's arrival and a new consciousness. Mother has made it very clear, the interconnection or the oneness that are two, the two that are one, when she said, without him, I exist not. Without me, he is unmanifest. So while we are, our webinar series is titled, What is New in Sri Aurobindo? Sri Aurobindo remains unmanifest unless we also invoke the mother, unless we know who the mother is and what does she bring to this supramental work that Sri Aurobindo was doing for the earth consciousness. So without him, I exist not. Without me, he is unmanifest. This photograph is, by the way, of the darshan photo, the 1950 April 24th darshan of mother's arrival itself, the final arrival of the mother. So I don't know how many people here are familiar or not so familiar with who this mother is. So I'm just going to go very quickly, even though both Sri Aurobindo and mother have said that their lives are not to be seen on the surface, but just as a brief, snapshot, so that to make them more real, more approachable to us. So I'll just go through something very quickly about how the mother, right from her childhood itself, was working towards bringing down a new consciousness through her own inner and outer preparation. But anyway, let me begin with what mother has very candidly declared who she is since the beginning of the earth. Wherever and whenever there was the possibility of manifesting a ray of the consciousness, I was there. So the eternity, the eternal aspect of who this mother is was declared very openly from by the mother herself. As we know, her given name was Mira Alfasa, and she first came to meet Sri Aurobindo in 1914. These are just some details. In fact, 1878, February 21. At one point, mother has also said that her preparation for the work that she was about to do had started in the womb itself, that she was very conscious of her mission in the womb itself, that she had chosen very consciously to which parents she would be born. So this is very interesting, that she was born to parents who were agnostic and atheists. And of course, they had recently migrated to Paris, and Paris or France at that time was what was the best of the West at that time, what was the best of the Western culture. And also very interesting about her name, Mehra, M-I-R-R-A, which is, this is how it is spelled in her birth certificate, but she herself many times wrote her name as M-I-R-A, and Sri Aurobindo also used that spelling at various places. And it was named, she was named after her grandmother, whose name spelling was M-I-R-A. So the connection between the Mehra of Sri Krishna's devotee and this mother Mehra is very interesting if you look at it that way. So in this book, The Yoga of the King in Savitri, the Divine Mother, the Supreme Divine, when she blesses King Ashwapati. Sorry, Lena, can you please stop this line thing? It's very, I don't know how to stop this. There is a line that is coming up. Lena Roy, please. Because this is not good for, these are Sri Aurobindo's words we are talking of.
Let me see if
so
I can.
this is how King Ashwapati is blessed of how the mother will descend. And the supreme voice tells King Ashwapati, "O strong forerunner, I have heard thy cry. One shall descend and break the iron law, change nature's doom by the lone spirit's power, a limitless mind that can contain the world, a sweet and violent heart of ardent calms, moved by the passions of the gods shall come. All mights and greatnesses shall join in her. Beauty shall walk celestial on the earth. Delight shall sleep in the cloud net of her hair. And in her body, as on his homing tree, immortal love shall beat his glorious wings. She shall bear wisdom in her voiceless bosom. Strength shall be with her like a conqueror's sword, and from her eyes the eternal's bliss shall gaze. A seed shall be sown in death's tremendous hour, a branch of heaven transplant to human soil. Nature shall overleap her mortal step. Fate shall be changed by an unchanging will." This is the work for which Mother.
So many, all the intellectual, all the professor, all these things, all the international society arranged. I have a.
Sorry, Miss Lena Roy, you have to remove this line. I'm going to stop sharing, please. This is quite. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and then share again. Because this is something which is not.
Let me see if I can rub it out.
Yeah. So yeah, this is.
No. That's why.
Okay, Lena. Yes.
Yeah, we continue, please.
Yes. So nature shall overleap her mortal step. Fate shall be changed by an unchanging will. This is the work for which King Ashwapati was given the boon, that this is the Supreme Mother will descend to do this work, who will bear wisdom in her voiceless bosom, and strength shall be with her like a conqueror's sword, and a seed shall be sown in death's tremendous hour. So from her childhood, just, as I said, just in a way to kind of know how she was already very conscious of her mission, and how she was preparing inwardly and outwardly for the work that she was supposed to do. She's spoken about how, as a child, she was very observant, and she could, identify very closely with all kinds of expressions in Mother Nature. And she was very fond of learning, even though till the age of 7, she couldn't read. But within few years, once she started reading, learning how to, when she learned how to read, within few years, she finished all the books that were there in her father's library. She was deeply interested in painting, music, science, literature. So the idea, and also a lot of physical activities, skipping, running, games. So she was developing this integral personality herself. Again, learning the piano. She was an accomplished pianist. She was an accomplished painter, an artist also. Right from the age of 8 onwards, she was, learning painting. And she was a pupil at the Academia Julian in Paris. She's written a lot. I mean, she's spoken a lot about her interaction with the famous artists of the times and her observations of how the artist's psychology is, and the implications of that in development of an integral personality, why it is so important to do that. So she was, another interesting thing is that she was, right from her own experience, she was very cognizant of how learning should be a joyful activity. This is very much reflected in her philosophy of integral education later on. All her studies, she said, were a means of joy to her. I enjoyed myself, enjoyed. It was all enjoyable, she said. Just quick things, some of her paintings, some of her work that she did in Pondicherry, self-portrait of 1935 of hers, of Sri Aurobindo's, and of Champaklalji. She did drawings of many of the disciples. She, like I mentioned earlier, she could completely identify with nature. So if she is the Supreme Mother, which we'll come to know a little later, she was also identified very closely with the Mother Nature, who is sort of like the, the para prakriti identifying with the prakriti, the Mother Nature. So whether it's flowers, trees, or animals, she could completely identify with them, which is why we also have the spiritual significance of flowers that she has given to more than 850 flowers. So not only with, smaller animals, but even with lions, she could identify. And she's recorded, she's on record talking about how once she visited a zoo and she saw a lion in the cage, and how she connected with the lion and how she communicated with him, and how the lion seemed to understand what she was communicating and came forward. So, her love for all kinds of creatures as the Supreme Mother was part of her inner and outer work that she was about to do. Then another important part of her preparation was of her forays into occultism, for which she spent a lot of time in Algeria with Max Thion and his wife, Alma. And there are lots of conversations of her in Mother's Agenda as to what she gained from Max and his wife. And his wife was the main occultist at the time. And also when she realized that it was enough, when she found this one particular, through one experience, when she found the key to immortality, following the instructions of Max and Alma, and she reached that point, she reached that place where she could find the mantra of immortality, she refused to hand it over to Max, which she said later on that I gave it to Sri Aurobindo. So she was also cognizant of how much it was necessary and when to move forward to the next, the spiritual development path. There are also lots of, talks that she has given in Paris to, a group of spiritual seekers that she had put together. She also wrote lots of plays based on the work that she was doing at that time, a few plays about that. So coming to how she became conscious of her mission. She said, it's as though I was born with it. And following the growth of mind and brain, the precision and completeness of this consciousness grew also. Between 11 and 13, a series of psychic and spiritual experiences revealed to me not only the existence of God, but man's possibility of uniting with him, of realizing him integrally in consciousness and action, of manifesting him upon earth in a life divine. So this consciousness was very much there. This awareness was very much there in her early years itself. And here she's talking about 11 and 13. But if you read the whole passage, she talks about how even at the age of 5, some of her experiences were very obvious to her regarding the work that she's supposed to do. Just a few pictures about her fascination and her love for tennis. So coming to her work with Sri Aurobindo. So March 29th, 1914 is an important date. And she said, as soon as I saw Sri Aurobindo, I recognized in him the well-known being whom I used to call Krishna. And this is enough to explain why I am fully convinced that my place and my work are near him in India. So if you read this passage completely, how I became conscious of my mission, this passage continues and comes to this, because before this, she's talking about as part of her preparation, inner and outer, she was visited by a lot of teachers, some of whom she met later on the physical plane, on the earth. But there was one teacher who was constantly visiting her, one figure that was constantly visiting her, whom she named Krishna. And she also speaks about that at that time she had no knowledge of who Sri Krishna is, what Bhagavad Gita is. She read Bhagavad Gita later on. And yet the name that she gave to this figure who was visiting frequently was Krishna. And when she meets Sri Aurobindo on March 29th, 1914 in the afternoon, she had traveled to Pondicherry with her husband, but her husband had taken an appointment for morning. She chose to go alone in the afternoon, not with her husband. And she recognized that same figure whom she called Krishna. And that was enough for her to be convinced. I climbed up the stairway and he was standing there, waiting for me at the top of the stairs. Exactly my vision. Dressed the same way, in the same position, in profile, his head held high. He turned his head towards me and I saw in his eyes that it was he. The two things clicked, gesture of instantaneous shock. The inner experience immediately became one with the outer experience. And there was a fusion, the decisive shock. The two things, her inner experience of meeting Krishna in her visions and the outer experience of seeing Krishna in front. That was the decisive shock, exactly her vision. And then she also talked about that what that meant for her was that it gave her certitude, which she said it is so important because there are a few things like that, she said, in human nature, in the deep human need. And what is that need? A need for certitude, which is security. I don't know how to explain it, she says, because I had the experience of it. I saw it was one of the human needs and I understood it very intensely. For when I met Sri Aurobindo, this certitude is what made me feel I had found the truth I needed. So psychologically, we have this very strong need of certitude. She's speaking of that. And she experienced that certitude in a divine way when she met Sri Aurobindo, that she found the truth with a capital T, that she needed, that she was seeking. And as we know, 1914 is also the time when the journal Arya starts with, Mother and Paul Richard doing the French version, and Sri Aurobindo looking after the English edition of that. It was started on Sri Aurobindo's birthday, but before that, the Second World War started, and Mother and her husband had to leave for France and then for Japan. And in Japan, there is another phase of her preparation that happens, which is her indulgence into the higher vital, the beauty aspect, especially in a collective life, and her painting, her work as painter also blossoms there. But going back to 1914, when she had first met, there is a beautiful prayer of the Mother in volume 1, which is Prayers and Meditations, where she has written about what this experience meant for her. And I'm just going to read out part of that, where she said, "It matters little that there are thousands of beings plunged in the densest in ignorance. He whom we saw yesterday is on earth. His presence is enough to prove that a day will come when darkness shall be transformed into light, and thy reign shall be indeed established upon earth." So this certitude comes again, that his presence is enough to prove that the Lord Supreme's reign shall be indeed established upon earth. Again, an important clue into the work that she is supposed to be doing for the earth, which is to establish the divine life, to establish the Supreme's reign on the earth. Later on her 90th birthday, when a newspaper wanted to print some of Mother's reminiscence, and she was approached that what is to be said. She said, the reminiscences will be very short. Simple. I came to India to meet Sri Aurobindo. I remained in India to live with Sri Aurobindo. When he left his body, I continued to live here in order to do his work, which is by serving the truth and enlightening mankind, to hasten the rule of the divine's love upon earth. Very simple. Her only aim in life, she said on 15th August 1954, this was her message that she had given when she was awarded Indian citizenship, and she had made a declaration as to what becoming an Indian citizen meant for her. And as part of that declaration, she said, my only aim in life is to give a concrete form to Sri Aurobindo's great teaching. And in his teaching, he reveals that all the nations are essentially one and meant to express the divine unity upon earth through an organized and harmonious diversity. So she becomes an Indian citizen, and she speaks about how one day she will be allowed to keep dual citizenship, how the future will be about that, how the unity of nations is the future that Mother and Sri Aurobindo have been working towards. And in this is also an interesting starting point to talk about Auroville, which is an experiment in human unity, which will be the subject of the next webinar in March. But even on this day, she speaks about that. And another message, when she's asked, there is some form that need to be filled out, and she's asked, the disciple asks the Mother, what should I put under the column nationality? She says Indian, because she said, India is the country of my soul. I am by soul's disposition an Indian. So Sri Aurobindo and the Mother strove together to embody and manifest upon earth this divine consciousness. And ashram became their laboratory, their starting point to bring this divine consciousness. And then from within ashram, from outside, rather not within, but from out of the ashram emerges Auroville, which is to kind of widen the laboratory, widen the experiment that is going on. So just very quickly, 1926 is considered as the foundation of the ashram's birthday, but it really grew up very organically. I don't need to spend time on this. This is, as I said, it is a field of practice of integral yoga. It is not necessarily kind of like a place to go and find seclusion and, like a cave in Himalayas to practice yoga, but rather to practice integral yoga within the thick of life. Now, I was speaking earlier about the exactly my vision part that Mother had spoken of when she first meets Sri Aurobindo. And then she also speaks in that same conversation about how the vision ends. She says that's the beginning of her vision, but the end of the vision involves a lot of experiences, which is a 10-month sojourn in Pondicherry from 1914 March till early 1915, 5 years of separation when she was in Japan, then the return to Pondicherry and the meeting in the same house, and in the same way did the end of the vision occur. What was the end of the vision? The end of the vision she described. The end of the vision she described beautifully as, in her own words,
Go ahead. I'll just take care of it.
This is her vision when she meets him the second time. I was standing just beside him. My head wasn't exactly on his shoulder, but where his shoulder was. We were standing side by side like that, gazing out through the open window. And then together, at exactly the same moment, we felt, now the realization will be accomplished. That the seal was set and the realization would be accomplished. I felt the thing descending massively within me with the same certainty I had felt in my vision. From that moment on, there was nothing to say, no words, nothing. We knew it was that. So the certitude, the assurance that now the Ishvara and the Shakti have come together, so the realization will be accomplished. The work will be accomplished. She speaks of this very clearly in her conversation. About her own second and final coming to Pondicherry, or rather coming to Sri Aurobindo, she has said in her own words that this was the tangible sign of the sure victory over the adverse forces. What were the adverse forces? Primarily at that time was the First World War. The world has just come out through the First World War. And it is really interesting, while the world was getting ready for this, the great war that was called at the time, the mother and Sri Aurobindo had started the journal Arya, the very name Arya, which was going to be, really corrupted in the within this, through this Asuric force, through the hostile force that was emerging at the time. But her coming to Sri Aurobindo, her joining Sri Aurobindo for the work that is to be done, was the tangible sign that victory is sure. And Sri Aurobindo himself has also said in one of his letters to a disciple that there was no difference between the mother's path and mine. We have and have always had the same path. So she was in France, Sri Aurobindo was in India, but they have always had the same path, the path that leads to the supramental change and the divine realization. Not only at the end, but from the beginning, they have been the same, he said. Now, I think in the last webinar, there was a lot of beautiful discussion on Sri Aurobindo's new light on the Veda and the Vedic interpretation in the light of Sri Aurobindo. In integral yoga, both the Vedic and the Tantric approaches to the divine have come together. So Sri Aurobindo has talked about if Veda or Vedanta represent one side of the one truth, which is the seeking after the one Brahman, Tantra with its emphasis on Shakti is another, because Tantra's emphasis has been on understanding the manifestation of the many. In this yoga, which is integral yoga, all sides of the truth are taken up, both the Vedic and the tantric paths to the truth. But they are not taken in the forms that were given in the past, but rather in the essence and carried to their fullest and highest significance. I'm not going to go into detail as to what are the fullest and the highest significance, but briefly, what that also means is that the emphasis on surrendering to the mother as the Shakti through which all will be done and all can be done, is key to the integral yoga. And the main difference between Tantra and integral yoga, the way Tantra is synthesized in integral yoga is also that in Tantra, if the Shakti, if the energy is supposed to rise from below, ascend from below to high, here it's the descent of the Shakti from high to below. That is the key aspect of the Tantric that has been taken up in integral yoga. But surrendering to the mother's force and recognizing that nothing can be done without her, a complete trust in mother is key to practicing integral yoga. And invoking her presence, invoking her descent is the key to the integral yoga, the practice of integral yoga as derived from the tantric path. So just a quick reminder, this may be from the last webinar, how the Vedic cosmology speaks about the relation between man and cosmos, which are built on the same principle. And these are the 7 planes of consciousness, the 7 lokas, as they call it, the 7 principles of existence. And the bottom 3, matter, life, and mind, which are what have been there in existence so far, what have emerged out of the inconscient so far. And above that is, the top 3, the pararth, the higher hemisphere of the planes of pure existence, pure consciousness force, and pure bliss. Sat, Chit, Tapas, and Ananda are the higher hemisphere. But between the two is the link world, which in the Vedas is known as the Maharloka or the Mahidya, which is the field of truth consciousness, the plane of truth consciousness Sri Aurobindo speaks of, and that is the supermind. And the work that Sri Aurobindo and Mother were doing for the earth was to bring this plane of consciousness, of truth consciousness, Satyam Ritam Brahat, truth, right, and vast. It was for this work they have to come together. They had to come together, and then Sri Aurobindo will, I'll have Sri Aurobindo's own words describing why that was important. Her coming to Sri Aurobindo was important to do this work. So the work of supramental yoga was to bring down this plane of truth consciousness, perfect knowledge by identity. And this is what Sri Aurobindo said, why the two sides had to come together for this work. The function of Shakti, the mother, is something special. In my own case, it was a necessary condition for the work that I had to do. If I had to do my own transformation only, or give a new yoga or a new ideal to a select few people who came into personal contact with me, I could have done that without having any Shakti. But for the work that I had to do, it was necessary that the two sides must come together. By the coming together of the mother and me, certain conditions are created which make it easy for you to do the transformation. We just celebrated Mahashivaratri yesterday. Another reminder or another symbol of coming together of the Ishvara and Shakti. This is in a very concrete form, in our own time, the Ishvara and Shakti coming together. This is why Shiva is also known in, Sri Aurobindo has spoken of Shiva as the Lord of transformation. So Mahashivaratri as a way of bringing the Supreme and the Mother, the Supreme Mother, the Supreme Conscious Force of the Divine, is a beautiful reminder that whenever transformation has to happen, whenever transformation is the goal, the two sides had to come together. And, if you look at the history of avatars in India, or avatars rather, on the terrestrial plane, the Shakti has always come whenever the divine has taken an avatar, except that the Shakti has worked from behind. This is the first time Sri Aurobindo makes it very clear that it is through the mother you will come to me. So Shakti has to come in front, and through the mother, all will be accomplished, because she is the cause of it all, as he says in Savitri. Because the work is of transformation. So Sri Aurobindo has, in 1927, when a lot of questions were asked about, especially after the 1926 Siddhi, when Sri Aurobindo went into a seclusion for the supramental work that he was going to do to bring down the supermind in him. And this was after the Siddhi of the overmind descent in him, the 24th November 1926. And he puts mother in front. And a lot of people had asked the question, who is this mother? Is this the same embodied mother that we see here, the mother Mira Alfasa? And Sri Aurobindo, in detailed letters, explains who this mother is and what is the work of this mother? What are the various aspects of the mother? So this little book called The Mother is an important read. And I'll just read something very quickly where he says, the one whom we adore as the mother, this is the mother Mira Alfasa, is the divine conscious force that dominates all existence, one and yet so many-sided that to follow her movements is impossible, even for the quickest mind and for the freest and most vast intelligence. The mother is the consciousness and force of the Supreme, and far above all she creates. So he speaks of three poises of the mother: universe, the individual, the universal, and the transcendent. I'm not going to read out the whole thing, but I'll share it in our group so you can all take a look at that. And moving on, in the same book, Sri Aurobindo also speaks about why who is this mother power? What is the work that she does for the work of transformation? He says the supramental change is a thing decreed and inevitable in the evolution of earth consciousness. So this is certain that supramental change has to happen, because so far in the earth consciousness, only the first three, matter, life, and mind, the lower three planes of consciousness have evolved. So in the earth consciousness, the next step has to occur, because evolution is not complete. So the supramental change has to happen. It is inevitable. But for that, there is needed the call from below and sanction of the Supreme from above. And the power that mediates between the sanction from above and the call from below is the presence and the power of the Divine Mother. This is so clear who she is. It is her presence and her power that mediates between the call from below, call from the earth, call from earthly beings like ourselves, and sanction of the Supreme from above. And also, just this is very important, the mother's power and not any human endeavor and tapasya can alone rend the lid. There is a lid keeping the supermind hidden, and that lid has to be broken, that veil has to be broken. And only mother's power can do it. No human tapasya can do it. And that's what she did when she breaks that lid in 1956, on 29th February. Mother herself has also spoken of who she is. I am the cause, the great creatrix from whom everything emanates. Nothing is which is not in me. It will take you hundreds of births to understand what I am. And yet I reveal myself to my devotees who love me, and still I shall remain unseizable. So as Sri Aurobindo says, do not try to understand the many-sided movements of the mother. All you can do is love her. And mother reminds the same thing. And then in another conversation with Mona Sarkar, she also said, I do not reveal myself, neither do I declare or show what I am, but I am the all-powerful who has descended here below in a human body of flesh and bone. This is Avatar declaring her avatarhood. And there is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful line from the mother, which is so assuring. When we begin to realize who she is, then is the certitude that we have been initiated by her into the path of integral yoga. She says, when I say that I have initiated someone, I mean that I have revealed myself to this person without words, and that he was capable of seeing, feeling, and knowing what I am. So in many ways, the path of integral yoga, or the practice of integral yoga, can be summarized in simple way as to become capable of seeing, feeling, and knowing what the mother is, so that she reveals herself to us. So this is so assuring, so beautiful. I mean, every time I think of these, I recall these words. It's just I don't even have the word right now to say. It is just so, I will say the word assuring, that this is, and so, it also very simplifies. So there is life divine, there is synthesis of yoga, there is Savitri, all of this about how to, or 4 volumes of letters on yoga, but simple. All we have to do is to become capable of seeing, feeling, and knowing, and wait so that she reveals herself to us. This is the practice of integral yoga in one simple way. This is the work which she did on 29th November 1956. I've skipped some part about Sri Aurobindo's sacrifice of his physical sheath in 1950, just in the interest of time. But the golden day, as it is called, the 29th February 1956, in a collective concentration, in a collective meditation at Ashram Playground, when the supramental manifests on earth, the day of supramental manifestation. The supermind had already descended in Sri Aurobindo's physical in 1950 itself, which is why we had those 5 days of golden light emanating from his body. But on that golden day, the supermind, the supramental consciousness manifests on the earth plane itself. And this is an image, this is a painting that Preeti D had done to express that experience, which Mother had spoken about, how this golden door was there. And she took this one hammer, and with one blow, the flood of light descended on the earth. And this is how Sri Aurobindo has described this in Savitri. Remember, this was written before 1956. So it's an important thing to recall. The incarnate dual power, now that there is dual avatar of Ishvara and Shakti, supreme divine and the supreme conscious force of the divine, The incarnate dual power shall open God's door. Eternal supermind touch earthly time. The superman shall wake in mortal man and manifest the hidden demigod, or grow into the God light and God force, revealing the secret deity in the cave. Written before 1950, I should mention. This date, the golden day, is in 1956. So Mother explained about what this supramental consciousness is, or what this truth consciousness is, in her own words. She said, up to now, all that has manifested of the divinity is the world that we know it, but this manifestation is boundless. And after this mental world, the consciousness of the mind, as we know, of which the apex and prototype is man, the Manu, the mental being. Another reality will manifest, which Sri Aurobindo calls the supermind, for it is in fact the next step after the mind. So it will naturally be supramental, that is something above the mind. And this will be the beginning of a new world. It will be truly the changing of one world into another. For so far, the whole creation belonged to what he calls the lower hemisphere, as we know it, which is governed by ignorance. Ignorance, that is the avidya of the Indian thought, not ignorance as in no knowledge, and based upon the inconscient. It is from the inconscient that matter, life, and mind emerge. Whereas the other one will be a complete reversal, which instead of being based on ignorance will be based upon truth, because that is a descent from the Sachidanand, from the God's door. You know, the God's door will be broken, that lid will be rent by the mother herself. That is why it will be truly a new world. Later on, about a year and a half later, from 29 February, she speaks about how it is not just a promise, but a living fact, a reality that the supramental has manifested upon earth. It is at work here, and one day will come when the most blind, the most unconscious, even the most unwilling shall be obliged to recognize it. Even the most ignorant will be able to recognize, as the human manifestation was evident to all when it happened. There must have been time when human beings started walking on the earth, and animals couldn't recognize who is this strange creature? What is this new, life form that has come? So, same way, it will become so obvious that the work of supramental manifestation will become obvious to all. And on 15th August 1957, she declared a new world is born. All those who want to have a place in it must sincerely prepare themselves for it. Now, how is this supermind going to act? And how can we prepare ourselves to receive power of this supermind? And there is a very long passage that Mother has given where she says that, often we don't read Sri Aurobindo's work very closely. If we did, we will find all the answers in Sri Aurobindo's work. And here she actually quotes from Sri Aurobindo's work on the Veda, which is now known as the Secret of the Veda. I think it is CWSA 15, Secret of the Veda. Yes. So at that time it was called On the Veda. And there is one sentence that she picks from that sentence, from that book, about how this supermind is going to act and what are we going to do to receive it. How are we going to prepare ourselves to receive it? As we know, this hint of supermind, this hint of supramental change was there in the Veda itself, except that the Vedic Rishi's goal was not to ensure the descent of the supermind. Their work was more of ascending to the heights of the supramental consciousness. Sri Aurobindo's work was to ensure that this supramental consciousness descends and ensures the transformation of the earth consciousness itself, ensures the transformation of the earthly life itself. So this is the sentence that she quotes. The supramental world has to be formed or created in us by the divine will as the result of a constant expansion and self-perfecting. Simple. I mean, it sounds simple, but of course, it's not that simple. But this is what the Vedic Rishi's vision was, how to create a supramental world within, how to create the supramental power within, the supramental consciousness within, as the result of constant expansion and self-perfecting. So then Mother explains what this means. That is to say, to hope to receive, use, and form in oneself a supramental being, and consequently a supramental world, there must first of all be an expansion of consciousness, widening, and a constant personal progress. See how the links between integral yoga, the practice of integral yoga, and the Vedic truths are there. Expansion of consciousness, constant personal progress, not to have sudden flights, a little inspiration, a little aspiration, a little effort, and then fall back into somnolence. Today I remember divine, today I will do my meditation, today I will then go back to my inertia. No, this must be the constant idea of the being, the constant will of the being, the constant effort of the being, the constant preoccupation of the being. When somebody had asked the mother, Mother, how do I get in touch with with my psychic? Mother said, how much do you want it? Do you really want it? Do you really, really want it? If you want it, you will have it. So the constant idea, constant will, constant effort, constant preoccupation. If for 5 minutes in the day you happen to remember that there is something in the universe like the supramental force, and that after all, it would be nice if it manifested in me, and all the rest of the time you're thinking of something else and are busy with other things, there is not much chance that it would come and do any serious work in you. Sri Aurobindo says this quite clearly and precisely. He does not tell you that you will do it. He says it is the divine will. Remember, Sri Aurobindo said the supramental change is the thing decreed. So don't come and say, I can't. No one is asking you to do, but there must be enough aspiration and adhesion in the being to make the expansion of the being, the expansion of consciousness possible. So when somebody asked the mother, I can't do this integral yoga. Mother said, I am the one doing the yoga. Sri Aurobindo has also said, Mother is the goal, Mother is the path. So Mother is the path. Remember the Mother, offer to the Mother, love the Mother, connect with the Mother, stay in constant commune with the Mother. That is the way to practice integral yoga. That is the way to expand the consciousness. That is the way to constantly progress. For to tell the truth, Mother says, everybody is small, so small that there is not enough room to put any supramental in it. Because we are so filled up with the ordinary little human movements. There must be a great widening to make room for movements of the supermind, and an aspiration for progress, not to be satisfied with what one is, how one is, what one does, what one knows, or thinks one knows. Constant aspiration for something more, something better, for a greater light, a truer truth, a more universal goodwill. So this is, she says, the work that cannot be done in a few days. And yet, this, when Nirodha asked Sri Aurobindo, what is it that I need to know about integral yoga or about yoga in general? Sri Aurobindo said, just know this, there is soul, that there is a soul from below, aspiring from below, and there is grace from above. And Nirodha insisted, is this all I need to know? And he said, yes, that is all you need to know. The very first line of the book, the Mother says that there are two powers that in conjunction will make sure the work that we have to do, which is fall from below and supreme grace from above. So yes, this is a very long work, very tedious work, and yet with grace, with calling of the mother, this can be done. And how do we know whether one is in relation with the supreme, the supramental power? Mother said just very two simple things. When you have attained a perfect and constant state of equality, equanimity, nothing moves your vital, mental, physical being. You are perfectly equanimous towards all happenings within and without. And this is a constant state, constant poise, and an absolute certainty in the knowledge. That this absolute certainty only happens when there is knowledge by identity, when the knower becomes one with the known. Otherwise, there is always an instrument through which we know something. So these are the two signs, irrefutable signs, Mother said, that one is in relation with the supramental power. The absolute and indisputable certainty of an infallible knowledge through identity and a perfect and constant equality. And going back to our question that we had, what will be, how will supermind or how will supramental manifest? The first power, the first aspect of the supramental that will manifest on the earth, the mother said in one conversation that she has become, it has become very clear to her that the first aspect will be probably power rather than the aspect of joy or truth. Because the work of supramental is to facilitate, is to enable a new race, supramental beings, for a new race to be found on earth. It would necessarily be protected from other earthly elements in order to be able to survive, and power is protection. But this action of power to be truly effective, it would have to be founded on knowledge and truth and love and harmony. All aspects of the mother, knowledge, the Maheshwari, the truth aspect, the Maheshwari, love, the Mahalakshmi, love and harmony, and then we have the power aspect, the Mahakali aspect, and then of course the ground has to be prepared by the action of a sovereign will and power, which will be the Mahasaraswati power, the detailed work that will have to be done. And then there is another conversation in 1969 where Mother reveals something very significant of the descent of the Superman consciousness. And I think it's important that we read the whole sentence, whole paragraph from her. She said, it was 1st of January after midnight. I woke up at 2 in the morning, surrounded by a consciousness so concrete and new in the sense, new is an important word, that I had never felt it before. And it lasted absolutely concrete, present for 2 or 3 hours. And afterwards it spread out and went about to find people who could receive it. And I knew that it was the consciousness of the Superman. That is to say, the intermediary between man and the supramental being. So the consciousness of the Superman is already on the earth. That has given to the body a kind of assurance and confidence. That experience has, as it were, stabilized the body. And if it keeps the true attitude, every support is there to help it. So this is what, a further assurance and confidence that the new consciousness is already at work. And again, invoking lines from Savitri. But when the hour of the divine draws near, the mighty mother shall take birth in time, and God be born into the human clay in forms made ready by your human lives. Then shall the truth supreme be given to men. And what is the truth supreme? The truth supreme is nature shall live to manifest secret God. The spirit shall take up the human play. This earthly life become the life divine. So the mother is here, the mother's work to bring down the new consciousness, to become a spiritual collaborator in the supramental yogic work of Sri Aurobindo was there. And the mother said, I do not treat me like a guru. Being a universal mother, being a mother is most natural to me. And then she's also said, I do not want to be worshipped. I have come to work, not to be worshipped. When mother is saying this, I have come to work, how can we who are aspiring to be her children just simply, do our deep and deepak and agarbatti and flowers and offer it to Mother and Sri Aurobindo and say that we are invoking their presence? No, we have to do the work. What is Mother's work? All work can be Mother's work when done with the right attitude. So these are all kinds of aspects of practice of integral yoga that we can, we'll probably be discussing in a later session. I think not the next, the one after that. So what are the attitudes we must have to do the work for the mother, whichever work we take up? All work is Mother's work because all is she. She is the cause of it all. The very fact that we are gathered here for this webinar is also because she willed it. She made it happen. So it is with this, I stop here. I don't know whether I have exceeded the time or not. Let me just stop this sharing here. Okay. How are we doing with time wise? Sorry, you are on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I was on mute. Yeah, very good. Nice. Excellent. We are dot on time. Excellent.
Okay.
Yep.
So we can
so
have some.
I don't know how easy it would have been for, how difficult it would have been for you to bring so much of thing in such a short span of time, but nothing more would have been asked. But yeah, there are some questions. We can open up for the questions right now, correct?
Yes.
There is something on the chart itself. Beloo, can you please talk a little bit more on what Mother has said about knowledge by identity?
Yes. Yes. So so knowledge by identity is not necessary. I mean, certainly it is not through mind, because mind is not an instrument of knowledge. Mind does not know. Mind receives. Mind processes. Mind is a processing center. When it's like, how when Mother said about identifying with the consciousness of the flower, or identifying with that lion, that the story that she's spoken of in Paris in a zoo, that she could become one with that flower and know what the spiritual essence of the flower is. That is knowledge by identity. So it's like, how we say, even before Newton, it was not that apples were not falling from the trees before. Apples were falling from the trees way before. Always they've been falling. But Newton was in that receptive state of mind, or that receptive state of consciousness, that to him, that he became identified with the act of that falling, or identified with the, the very earth which received the falling, or the force in the earth which received the falling apple, and knew that there is some force which can be called as gravitational force. There have been scientists, I'm thinking of one particular, I think her name, if I remember correctly, was Barbara McIntosh, who was a plant geneticist. if I'm saying that correctly, or something to do with plants. And she has spoken about how she could identify with the kernel in the corn to know the structure of the corn. So it was not just through microscopic study, but to become really one with the kernel itself. So that even in this ordinary so-called secular knowledge, true knowledge only reveals itself when there is an identification. Often in our ordinary experience also, we may think about, I have to do this work, or I have to write this paper, or I have to do this. We think of this idea, that idea, the mind starts churning and this and that. And then, as Mother said, step back, quieten yourself, go within, and the true work, the true thing that needs to happen will emerge. The true thing that you have to speak will emerge. Sri Aurobindo, when he gave the Uttarpara speech, for example, is another example of that. When he came with a certain idea what he will speak, and he stands before the audience, and whatever needed to be said came out, and that became a turning point for much of the work that he was also going to do later on. So this is knowledge by identity. He could identify with that supreme source from where the words, the right words will come, which will create the right, the right force, and could deliver them with the right force, and which will create the right impact. So this, I think, would be, in brief, what is knowledge by identity. Identification with what is to be known. Okay, there is next question. With sapping old age and frail body, one cannot do Mother's work. What is your answer to that? Very interesting question. Well, we can also think of remembering the Mother as doing Mother's work. Frail body or old age does not prevent us from remembering the Mother. Remembering the Mother not in a mental, mechanical way, but in a very, very conscious way. We can also think about speaking to those who are open. This is also very important, not to speak of the Mother to everyone. This is what Sri Aurobindo has also said in one of his letters to a disciple: do not speak of the Mother to anyone who is, who are not open. And as Sri Krishna also says in Gita, do not speak of this knowledge to those who are not capable to accept, to receive this knowledge. So one work that can be done is, to those who are open, we can speak of who this Mother is or what her work is. But most important is to remember and to call the Mother, so that her force, her power, her light is infused more and more and more into this terrestrial physical consciousness, within and without. So that is my quick answer to that. Was there any change of the role of the Mother when Sri Aurobindo was in physical body and when he was not there? How Shakti performed without the force of Shiva Krishna? Okay, so the first question, was there any change of the role of the Mother when Sri Aurobindo was in physical and when he was not there? The Mother herself has said that until Sri Aurobindo was in the physical, till then, it was Sri Aurobindo who was doing the yoga for her also. And on December 2nd, 1950, December 5th, 1950, when Sri Aurobindo leaves the physical, Mother is on record saying that for some time when she stood in front of him, everything descended in her. So it's as if the supramental that he had in him was kind of like transferred over to him, over to the Mother. And then the Mother, even after 1926, Mother was given the charge of and Sri Aurobindo has said this, of the inner and outer progress of the sadhaks, that she will be in charge of the inner and outer care. I mean, she will be taking care of both the inner and the outer needs of the sadhak. But certainly after 1950, Mother was, doing everything. She was already doing it, except that she was also now doing the yoga for the supramental. Because see, what happened is that when, this is what Mother has said after 1950, that when a conversation had happened before, prior to 1950, between Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that if there is a need to bring the supermind down, if there is a need for one of them to leave the physical, to leave the physical sheath, to leave the body, then Sri Aurobindo said, I will be the one to go. And Mother said, no, I would be the one to go. And Sri Aurobindo said, no, your Adhar, your physical base is much more prepared to receive that force. So it will be I who will be going. So you see, this is how, what is interesting is, in the inconscient itself, supermind is involved. If the supermind was not involved within the inconscient, there was no way it could emerge, except that without, or if the truth of the matter or truth of the life or truth of the mind was not involved in inconscient, none of these planes of consciousness would have emerged. Except the fact is that unless there is a pressure from above, that principle of supermind would not have come forth. So the pressure had to be given from above. For that, Sri Aurobindo had to leave the physical. And then the light descends, then the supermind descends. So this is one change of the role of the Mother. How Shakti performed without the force of Shiva and Krishna. I think I've already addressed that everything came into her itself. And then another part of their work is the work on the cells, the work on the transformation of the physical itself, of the body itself. And that work she continued. So which is what, when I was reading that passage about the consciousness of the Superman, all this comes when she's describing the work that she was doing at the cellular level. Cell of the body will be supramentalized, which is what is necessary is to create the new race, to create the supramental beings. So, which is the psychicized being itself. So the work, the Shiva and Shakti fuse in that work itself. So I hope that is sufficient for now.
Sure.
How can I remain conscious of the Mother in every moment? Sometimes I get distracted whenever I'm somewhere doing something outside, my mind gets fluctuated. Yes, Subhajit, you are not alone. We are all there. And as I said, I don't like to say what I think. I think Sri Aurobindo has answered all these questions. This question was also asked of Sri Aurobindo, that you say remember and offer. What I don't even remember to remember, especially when I'm doing the work, I get so occupied with the work. And Sri Aurobindo says, yeah, it's not, when you are doing the work, you have to concentrate on the work. What is important is that before the start of the work, you remember her. After the conclusion of the work, you remember her. In between, if you can, remember her. And slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly through this practice, you will begin to find. And when you remember consciously, invoke her, ask her to be there with you, ask her to guide you in what you are doing. And at that, slowly, as a result of the practice and her grace, you will begin to find that there are there is like not a split, but the consciousness is divided. There is an inner and the outer consciousness. The outer consciousness, from an outer consciousness point of view, you are concentrated on the work. and the inner consciousness is constantly remembering her. This is the outcome of that practice. But to begin with, remember at the beginning, remember at the end, before any work, whatever, when Udar Pinto was asked by the mother, do you remember me? And, he said, yeah, I do. Said, okay, tell me how does your dincharya begin? How does your day begin? And he said, I get up in the morning, I go to the washroom, I brush my teeth. And mother said, wait a minute, do you remember me when you brush your teeth? I said, no, that's where you're doing it wrong. Remember me at every, brushing my teeth is also an important work. So brushing your teeth, taking shower, getting ready for the day, remember me. Take me with you. In one of our webinars, study groups that I do, there was one person, and I think some of you have heard this before from my other programs. And I loved what he said, this young man. He said he has been through so much at a very young age. He has seen all that, like he has gone to the wrong side. He has done things that are not considered good, from a moral, ethical standpoint, and this and that. He has gone through some tough times psychologically. And what he realized as a result of those 2-3 years of down phase was, even if I can't love the mother, I should never leave the mother. Hold on to the mother. So it's like, cling to the mother. Mother said, cling to the truth. And Sri Aurobindo said, golden rule, do not do anything. Do not think anything that you will not be able to do or think in the presence of the mother. For she is indeed always present. So, through these simple things, we can remain conscious of the mother. But yes, easier said than done, but no sadhana. That's why it's called sadhana. It is not just, a walk in the park. Like mother herself said, that you think of me for 5 minutes, or you think of supramental force for 5 minutes, and then rest of the day, Netflix and this and that and everything is there. That's not how the transformation will work. But small baby steps, that's how it is. Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, was any question? Any further? I mean, it's easy to understand. The concept of mother, the word mother is always there, very close. So it's very not that difficult, but yet, yes.
Very good, excellent by Beludi. And one thing completely, like actually yesterday you mentioned about Shivaratri, and I read also about that union of Goddess Parvati and Lord Shiva is the yoga, and that you clearly mentioned about Sri Aurobindo and the mother. So if that concept is understood, I think that will be the new chapter which mother is thinking that, like mother predicted, as you said, that in future, even if you do not understand, still you can understand the truth. Very, very excellent, this presentation. I have only one quick question which I read. It was when I was very young, like a kid. I mentioned was that my dad was a devotee of Sri Aurobindo, and the mother. I heard that time was mother was not when people were going to see the mother, they can only see her feet, not the full body. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Somebody said that was their experience, or?
No, like I read about that or heard about that. Like people were going to see mother, nobody can see her full face. Like only people can see her the feet. Is that
No,
correct?
no.
I don't know. Like maybe to the
Maybe
outsider,
not.
I
No,
just heard that, so I'm not sure on that. So that's why I'm
yeah,
asking.
I haven't come across like that. In
Okay.
fact, one could even say that this is the first time the Supreme Shakti, the Supreme Mother,
Mhm.
came on the earth in her full embodiment.
Mhm.
So, see, if you think about like this, in Sri Ram's time, Sita Mata was there, but the two could not unite to do the work that was, you know, they were not there to do the work of transformation. The two were separated. Sri Ram did his work, which was to establish the sattvic consciousness, and mother power, the earth. She was the daughter of the earth. So coming from the nature, which is the younger sister of the Supreme Mother, the Supreme Shakti. So she was the one who was, an embodiment of patience, an embodiment of acceptance, an embodiment of complete tolerance, and yet also courageous, because she was also, the whole Ramayana itself, like, as Rishi Valmiki says, is about the charitra of Sita, in that sense that she was the embodiment of the Mother Earth, which was the work that she was assigned to do in that incarnation, and Sri Ram's work to establish the sattvic consciousness on that earth consciousness. But they did their work separately. So whether it is the work of, whether it was during the 1 year when she was abducted by Ravan, because her work was in, to hasten the return of, who was Ravan? Ravan was another, Ravan was from that, the Jai Vijay. Ravan and Kumbhakaran were the Jai Vijay of Vishnu's, guardians from the Vaikuntha Lok. But anyway, you read these stories and you get these connections like that. Then comes Sri Krishna's advent, and the Supreme Mother embodies as Rukmani, as Satyabhama, as Radha. Three powers, right? The Rukmani as the Lakshmi, the Mahalakshmi, the harmony. Satyabhama, again, the daughter of the earth, the embodiment of the earth mother. And Radha, the mother power of Ananda. Krishna's work is remembered, as with Radha, which is the power of Ananda, the mother's power of Ananda. Yet, they were not together in that sense. And then you also have the story of Shiva, and the eternal story of Shiva and Parvati. So there have all these different stories of Ishvara and Shakti coming together for different kinds of work. But in the full embodiment, it is the Supreme Mother in the embodied form of Mira Alfasa, where she has taken on the work of Earth's transformation further. Parvati is the daughter of the mountain, the daughter of the material nature. She, the mother Mira Alfasa, is the power herself, is the Shakti herself in all her aspects. If you read chapter 6 of the book, The Mother, Sri Aurobindo makes it very clear that up till now, the four aspects of the mother, the four powers of the mother, Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati, have appeared on the earth consciousness. There are yet more powers that are to be descended, and one of them is the power of Ananda, or the aspect of the Ananda. When somebody asked if that is what the Radha power is, he said yes. On the earthly plane, it has been very much taken over by the devotional Vaishnavism way of looking at Radha's and Krishna's union. But the true Radha power is the power of Ananda that has yet to come. But before that can happen, the power of truth had to be established on the earth consciousness. And that could not have happened without the manifestation and descent of supramental consciousness. So that is the work for which the Supreme Mother, Meera Alfasa, comes on the earth and collaborates with Sri Aurobindo to establish the reign of truth so that the earthly life can receive the true Ananda, which it is already a decreed thing, which is the way, divine's will is. Mother reads from Sri Aurobindo's writing on the Veda. This is divine will that this will happen. So if you look at the progression, that also is very interesting.
So one more is here. From my understanding is that when the supermind manifests on earth, there were very few. There were very few, who were open to receive the supermind. Can you please discuss that?
My understanding is when there were very few who were open to receive them. Yeah, I guess we can look at it like that, but this is not the way to really understand that if there were more people, the work will go faster, because the divine will does not necessarily need human collaboration. The divine will work. Yes, it will be important if more and more people were receptive. And Sri Aurobindo has talked about this at many places in his conversations, that why his work is being delayed, that if it was only up to him, if his concern was only to bring down supermind in him, he would have been done in 1930s itself, except that the work was also delayed by the hostile forces when the Second World War comes, or when his so-called, when the hostile forces attacked during his so-called accident in 1938. There were a lot of adverse forces that were going on. And George Van Rechem has written a lot about it in his writings on Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So yes, receptivity is important. And yet Mother has also said that, when somebody asked that, will our collaboration be of help for the work of the supermind? Mother said, no. Supermind will work on its own way. But yes, if you want to help. But the divine will depend on human contribution as such. But yes, greater receptivity would mean lesser force of the hostile beings or the hostile forces, which can accelerate the pace. Yes. Please explain a little more on feeling of certitude. Is it mental or vital part of us which experiences it? I would say it is the psychic. It is the true being within which experiences that. And it is often in our ordinary experience, it could be like a very faint whisper or a very faint hint. We could easily miss it. But in Mother's case, what she's talking about, because she was already so prepared, so receptive, and she did this. And when you read that letter, read that passage of hers when she describes how that first meeting was, she said, without even knowing the Hindu customs, I did the complete pranam in the Hindu way to this being whom I used to call Krishna. So it was just an obvious, a very spontaneous gesture on her part, because she felt that certitude in the soul itself. So it is that part in us which feels the certitude. The mental or vital can always waver. Aaj hai, kal nahi hai. Like this is also good idea. That is also good idea. This is also a good approach to take up this work. This is also not so bad. So that certitude is not a part of the mental or vital. Yeah.
Okay. I think we are dot on time.
Yes. Good.
Good. Anything
Okay.
else, or we can wrap up? Okay. So,
Satyavrata ji, do you have something?
No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does doing pranayam every day morning also helps us in the integral sadhana? Yeah, any kind of thing. See, these are all preparations for the outer being, regulating the breath. I mean, yeah, it strengthens the life plane in us. It strengthens the, the vital in us. So yes, that can help. When mother was asked whether Naam Japa or other practices or mantra chanting, whether these things help, she said all these can be initially very good preparation, though no method is prescribed in integral yoga and no method is proscribed in integral yoga. So in that sense, you can do it because it gives you a certain discipline. It gives the being a certain discipline, and it regulates the being to receive the grace, to receive the light, to receive the force. So yes, anything that helps you quieten down, helps you remember her, seeing mother's photo, because mother has said, I am there in all my photographs, and each photograph carries a different state of consciousness. So all those things are important. You can, it's not like pick and choose kind of thing, but whatever comes most spontaneously from within, that method is the right method for us. But as integral yoga, there is the triple labor of integral yoga that is written by Sri Aurobindo again in the book The Mother. That's like a little key to understanding integral yoga. The aspiration, rejection, and surrender. That's the triple labor. We must aspire. So when we are doing pranayam, when we are doing japa, when we are chanting mantra, do it with the true aspiration. Reject everything that prevents us to, from connecting with the divine through our aspiration, and ultimately surrender to the power of each and every method that we use, so that we are surrendering to the mother in a way to connect with her. So surrender is the key. Surrender is the beginning. Surrender is the end of integral yoga in that sense. As again, in Bhagavad Gita also, Shri Krishna gives Bhagavad Gita only when Arjun surrenders. And then he says, surrender is the last word of Bhagavad Gita. But surrender also does not come in a day. It is progressive. Aspire, reject, surrender. These are the three keys to the practice of integral yoga. There is a lot in rejection. Yeah.
so probably we'll end at this point.
Yes, yes. So if I can just request everyone to again just concentrate for 30 seconds and offer all this at the feet of the mother, so that receives this work, and we become, we are showered by her grace. So yeah, so just concentrate for 30 seconds and then we can leave. Namaste, and we'll see you at the next webinar.